In the original Greek, the word Jesus used for plank and speck are made from the exact same material, wood. He's not just being dramatic. That's the whole point of one of his most famous teachings. And once you see what he's actually saying about how your brain works, you won't be able to unsee it. This is the parable of the plank and the speck. His question about why you fixate on the sliver in someone else's eye while ignoring the beam in your own. Most people hear that as a simple lesson in humility to be less judgmental. But that barely scratches the surface. What it's actually describing is one of the most well-documented, most destructive blind spots in human psychology. In the Greek, plank is dokos, a wooden beam, the kind that holds up a roof. Speck is karphos, a tiny wood chip, almost invisible. That word choice was deliberate. The plank isn't just bigger than the speck, it's the same material. Jesus is not saying we judge others for the things that we also do. He's saying we judge others for the things we do more of. The person obsessing over someone else's small flaw often has a much larger version of that same flaw they simply can't see in themselves. Modern psychology has a name for this. It's called projection. Freud described it as the mind taking something uncomfortable about yourself and placing it onto someone else. Research goes further. A study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that when people are threatened by a trait that they secretly fear they possess, they don't just notice it more in others, they rate it as more severe. The more insecure someone is about their own anger, the more anger they perceive in everyone around them. The brain projects its own unresolved content outward, then reacts to what it sees as if it's real. That's the plank. You're carrying it and you're convinced it belongs to someone else. Here's the part most people never hear. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network. It activates when you're daydreaming, reflecting, and thinking about other people. It's heavily involved in self-referential thinking, which is constructing and protecting your sense of identity. And it has a strong bias towards self-protection. It filters information to protect the version of yourself you've come to believe. For example, if you've built an identity around being patient, your brain edits out the memories where you weren't. It literally rewrites your own history to protect the story. So when someone else is impatient in front of you, that network lights up with judgment because it's recognizing something it has buried in you. This is why the plank is invisible. The brain hides it on purpose. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of yourself you've rejected because they don't fit the image that you want to project. Jung said, whatever we refuse to see in ourselves, we encounter in others. The shadow doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It shows up in your irritations and your judgments of others. Every strong emotional reaction that you have to someone else's behavior is worth examining because there's a good chance that your brain is showing you something about yourself that it doesn't want you to look at directly. Think about that last time someone really got under your skin. Not a mild annoyance, but something that bothered you for days. Now ask yourself honestly, is there a version of that behavior in you, even a smaller one? If the answer is yes, you just found your plank. Jesus wasn't the only one who landed on this. Marcus Aurelius, writing privately in his own journal, kept circling back to the same warning. The fault we're quickest to condemn in someone else is usually the one we're most blind to in ourselves. Buddhist teaching describes almost the same identical mechanism, that what irritates us in another person is often the mind refusing to look at its own reflection. Different centuries, different continents, completely different vocabulary. But it's the same discovery made independently over and over again. This isn't just abstract. I not only watched it, but I also lived it for about 30 years in the corporate environments that I used to work in, before I even understood what this was. You see, every office runs on some version of a gossip mill. People quietly cataloging each other's flaws and trading them like currency. And here's the uncomfortable part. I didn't just watch it, I participated in it. I've sat in plenty of conversations, picking apart someone's shortcomings and looking back more often than not, thing being criticized was exactly what the person doing the criticizing was quietly struggling with themselves. I didn't see my own plank until years later. Now here's the part of this teaching most people miss, where the neuroscience gets practical. The parable doesn't just say, notice your plank. It says, remove it. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. That word first is doing a lot of work here. The teaching isn't saying don't help others, it's saying you can't help effectively until you've done the inner work yourself. Psychology backs this up completely. There's a phenomenon called emotional flooding, and this is when you're triggered by someone else's behavior. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thought and perspective taking, goes offline. You literally cannot see the situation clearly when you're emotionally activated. Your judgment becomes compromised, your empathy drops, and then your ability to actually help someone is severely limited. So when the text says you'll see clearly after removing your plank, that's not a metaphor. That's neuroscience. So what do you do with this? First, start treating your strong judgments as data. When someone's behavior genuinely bothers you, not mild irritation, but a real recurring reaction, write it down. Then ask the question most people avoid: where does this live in me? Not, am I exactly like this person, but is there any form of this in my life, in my past, or my private moments? Your mind will resist this, and that resistance is a signal that you're close to something real. Second, practice self-distancing. Instead of being inside your reaction, observe it from the outside. Research from Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan found that referring to yourself in the third person while journaling, for example, why is David reacting so strongly instead of why am I, activates greater self-insight and reduces emotional flooding. It creates just enough distance for the prefrontal cortex to stay online. Third, and this ties it together, redirect the energy. Once you identify the plank, the goal isn't to beat yourself up. The shadow isn't just a weakness, it's often where your greatest untapped potential is stored. For example, the person who judges others for being too aggressive might have a healthy assertiveness they've been suppressing. The plank, looked at honestly, often points directly to the next version of you. If this kind of deep dive is valuable to you, hit subscribe. If this brought something to mind, maybe a memory, maybe a plank you've been carrying, I want to hear it in the comments. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs today. So let's bring this home. The plank and the speck isn't a lesson about not judging others. It's a precise description of one of the most deeply wired biases in the human brain, projecting our unresolved traits onto others. The default mode network filtering out anything that threatens our self-image, the shadow shaping everything we judge and feel below our awareness. The story recognized this long before we had the vocabulary to describe it. And it didn't just diagnose the problem, it gave us the sequence for solving it. Do the inner work first, see clearly, then help. You came into this video thinking it was about judgment. It's really about perception. The fact that what you see out there is always, at least in part, a reflection of what's in here. The plank has been there the whole time. Now you know where to look. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.